Hello and welcome back to Jenna Gets Creative. Today I am going to do that every blank color art supply challenge once more, and I don't even know right now as I'm recording the intro what color that's going to be, because in my first one, when I did every red art supply, I asked you guys, the audience, do you want to see me do it again, and if so, which color should I do next? And so let's find out what color that was.
The color is purple. I got a lot of suggestions between the comments on my first video in this series, my Instagram and Twitter posts for it, and my friends over on Amino, and I'd say about 75% of those suggestions were purple. A strong second place suggestion was pink, by the way, so that may be what I do next. I took notes while I was working this time, so hopefully I can figure out how to turn this into a better voiceover than my every red art supply video. Yes, by the way, for those of you who watched that one, I did enjoy the process more this time. It still took a heck of a long time, and I was getting bored of the color purple by the end of it, but this was more fun. I was inspired by a photo I found on Pixabay of two people dressed up for a masquerade event of some sort, but I went a little more otherworldly with my interpretation. I hope you like the result. It's fitting for this time of year. By the way, if you're new here, please consider subscribing and don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. Just a reminder that YouTube has changed the notification bell. If it's not completely filled in, then you are only set to receive occasional notifications. Click it again to change your preferences if you want all notifications. I'm an art channel, as you can probably tell, and I upload at least twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and leave a comment down below. I love reading your comments, I really do appreciate the interaction, and I reply to everyone. If you saw my every red art supply video, which final piece do you like better? This one or the red one? I'll probably keep this series going, so which color would you like to see me tackle next? And of course, credit where credit is due, this challenge was popularized here on YouTube by Rin of Drawing with Waffles, and I've also seen a few others like Chloe Rose, Casey Golden, and most recently Jazza do it as well. Jazza actually put out an every red art supply video a couple weeks after I did, so that's a neat coincidence. Did you see that one? Let's get on with talking about the supplies and how I use them. The final swatch sheet I showed in the beginning there with the supplies is what I ended up using in this challenge, and it has a whopping 120 swatches on it. This was intimidating for sure. Just like I said last time, I did exclude oil paints due to drying time, and I also excluded my daughter's wax crayons and finger paints. Every other art supply in my studio/home office was fair game, and I was looking for purple art supplies that weren't too blue or too pink. I actually ended up stopping partway through when I got around to using regular colored pencils to search again for my Prismacolor metallic purple, because I realized I didn't have it and I found it hanging out in the wrong pencil case. My metallic Prismacolors are over 15 years old now. They're not quite as old as my Prismacolor Scholars, which are stamped with Barrel's company name. They do say Sanford, but they still say made in the USA. I believe they were a stocking stuffer one Christmas when I was in high school. Clearly I didn't like them at the time because a couple colors aren't sharpened yet. But I'm getting off topic. I did my sketching mostly off camera, and I cheated slightly and used a blue kohl erase. I realize I do have multiple supposedly erasable pencils in purple in this collection, but they're all crazy art and they suck. I needed a sketch I could actually see, work with, and layer on top of, so I went with a blue kohl erase. Sorry! One of these days I'll get more colors in the kohl erase than just the blues and a red. You may have also noticed a red smudge appeared on the paper early on. That was still on the edge of the ruler from the every red art supply video. Don't worry, it'll get covered. In the beginning, I figured I would separate the two figures into warm shades on the left and cool shades on the right, but that went out the window pretty quickly. I freestyled a lot of the decorative details on these outfits, rather than copying the outfits in my reference exactly, and it just felt right to do those in darker shades, which turned out to mostly be cool tones. I started off the background with my Kuretake Gansai Tambi paints and embraced any pilling the paper decided to do. I scraped those spots off after the paint was dry, and they revealed lighter spots which look cool and kind of remind me of stars. I started planning the border with those crazy art pencils, but again, they suck. They failed. At least I can say I gave them a try. At this point, the supplies being knocked off the list are all 3 crazy art pencils, mauve, pretty plum, and purple, and my non-metallic Gansai Tambi paints, which were 37 purple, 38 imperial violet, and 139 cobalt violet. I finished planning the border with one of my Joseph Hartman pencils. Which one? Can't tell you, they don't have names or numbers on the barrels. I ended up filling in the border pattern with the 3 Pentel Arts oil pastels on my list, the shades 13 purple, 40 hyacinth violet, and 92 violet, and then I blended them with my Gamsol odorless mineral spirits. The base color of the outer border was done using my purple Ghana paint marker, and then I gave it an antiqued look by painting over it with my Derwent Inktense 725 Dark Plum from their Traveler Pans palette, forced it to dry, beat it up with a hairdryer, and then roughed it up a bit more with my Tombow sanded eraser. I also added more to the background around that point using my lesser quality watercolors. Those include a full pan block of purple from a nameless student palette, 2 purples from my Symbolian Round Cakes palette, shade 26 violet from my Shalloy watercolor tubes, colors 18 and 19 in my Superior brand Fan palette, and a shade Permanent Blue Violet from my Sakura Koi palette. Once I had those supplies out of the way, I started working in some starter details. I made use of the fine liner ends on my Dual Art water-based markers. Those also do not have names or numbers anywhere on the barrels, but 6 of them made the cut for this video. I used my Ecoline brush pen in Pastel Violet to start off the texture of the left figure's skirt, and then made use of a pair of Touch 10 watercolor brush pens to add details to the hat, and attempted to add some splatters to the background, which didn't work. My Karen Brush Marker Pro in 226 Lilac was used on the same figure's ruffles. I pulled out my aging Thomas Kincaid watercolor tube in 430 Violet and used that on the right figure's boot, laces, and ring. The base coat for the left figure's bouquet and more details on her ruffles were done next using Daler-Rowney Simply Gouache in the shade Violet. After that, I started making use of my alcohol markers. Those included 10 Copics, 3 Winsor Newtons, 5 Ohuhus, 2 Spectra Ads, a Spectrum Noir Illustrator, and a Touch New. I won't bore you with every single shade name, but feel free to ask if you're curious. I did write them down. I did not include any of my other Touch New or Touch 5 markers because they aren't kept out as part of my normal marker collection these days. So with all the other brands I own, I don't feel like they add anything to my collection, and if I had taken the time to swatch them and pull markers from those, I think they would have just duplicated my other markers. The reason this one was included is because it's one of the 2 I turned into a brush marker in my popular Cheap to Copic video from last year, where I proved my theory that replacement brush nibs from Copic and similar brands can be used to modify cheaper markers if you're on a budget. The purple was my proof of concept, and then I did the brown on camera. I had one highlighter in this collection, a Pilot Friction in the shade Soft Violet, and I used it on the left figure's gloves. After that, I knocked my ballpoint pens off the list, adding details here and there. Those included 2 different purple Bic crystal pens and a purple Papermate Inkjoy. Interestingly enough, the 2 different Bic purples are probably meant to be the same shade, but they come from 2 different continents. The lighter shade was purchased here in Canada a few years ago, and the darker shade came from the UK in a scrawler box either late last year or early this year. At this point, I also made use of my purple fine liners, a Copic multi-liner in lavender, and a Superior microline in shade 807. I used my very old bottle of Winsor & drawing ink in violet on the left figure skirt, and thanks to the aging ink base and dye wanting to separate as it dried, it added some nice texture as a bonus. I then layered Marabou Aqua ink over it and also added it to her ruffles and bib. I used my violet Dr. P.H. Martin's Bombay India ink on the right side figure's skirt, lips, and decorative hat chain. With that, I was done with my liquid inks. I have a Daniel Smith dot card from one of last year's sketch boxes, so I made use of that on the right figure's hat and the left figure's blouse. Those shades were Rose of Ultramarine and Permanent Violet. With that, I was down to pencils, gel pens, 2 types of acrylics, and 1 metallic Gansai Tambi pan. I decided to use my Stabilo Carbothello pastel pencils next to get them out of the way. I used them along with a blending stump to create a gradient on the left figure's hat. Carbothello pencils aren't labeled with names, but they do have numbers, 365 and 385. From here, I went back and forth with the different pencils and gel pens to smooth out colors and add more details. Water-soluble pencils were blended with water, and in some cases other pencils were blended with Gamsol. Again, I'm not going to bore you with a long list of shade names, but this includes 46 pencils and 8 gel pens. 7 of those gel pens are generic gel pen refills, and 1 is a multicolored Reverie rainbow pen that happens to be on its purple layer right now. The pencils included 1 Derwent watercolor, 2 Faber-Castell Albrecht Dürer watercolors, 7 Derwent Inktense, 6 Joseph Hartmut, 1 Marco Raffiné, 2 ends of a single Chameleon pencil, 2 Staedtlers, 2 Laurentians, 4 Prismacolor Scholars, 7 Prismacolor Premiers, 3 Faber-Castell Gold Fabers, and 7 Faber-Castell Polychromos. Can you tell I like colored pencil? I think I might have a problem. Sorry if you can hear random noises in the background, my cats are going crazy and I'm done pausing and repeating myself. The Inktense pencils in particular were used to do a lot of smoothing and darkening since they do turn to ink when activated with water. Gamsol blending for colored pencils was mostly only done on the right side figure's jacket. The Prismacolor Premier Metallic Purple was not very metallic, which was kind of disappointing. The Marco Raffiné was more metallic, and that's a cheap Chinese brand off Wish. Once I was done with the pencils, I broke out that last Kuretake Gansai Tambi pan, 861 Gem Violet, and I used it to add a layer of sparkle to the left figure's hat and skirt before splattering the whole piece and dabbing it with a paper towel at random. This left me with just 2 acrylics to finish the piece off. I used my Derwent Academy acrylic in purple for the eyes, and then I used my Apple Barrel Craft acrylic in purple iris to add dots to the eyes, the corners of the frame, and the center of the left figure's hat piece. And with that, the piece was finally finished. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below and tell me which color I should do next. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.